The Greater Boca Raton Beach District is now called to order. It is Monday, July 19th, 2021. It's 5:15 p.m. Melissa, would you please call the roll?
Sorry about that. There we go. Commissioner Ernst,
Here.
Commissioner Engel,
Here.
Commissioner Rollins,
Here.
Commissioner Vogelsang,
Here.
Commissioner Wright, not with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Commissioners, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. It's time for public requests. If you'd please step to the podium and hold the microphone button down.
Good afternoon, everybody. Tom Thayer, 4821 North Dixie Highway in beautiful downtown Boca Raton, Florida. And just a couple of things here. It's been a couple of years since I've stood up at the podium here and expressed a couple of ideas or more. And the first idea that I want to just compliment on, I don't think this has ever been done before, and it came out over the weekend, but a wonderful publication to let some people know what the district does and what it has, what it owns, what it controls, what it is involved in. So hopefully everybody got one, and hopefully there's a major distribution list that this goes to besides me. So congratulations to whoever conceived the idea and whoever did all the artwork and public photos, etc. The next thing I want to do is talk about the tax situation. Obviously, that's on the agenda right now. And I want to encourage you to take control of your destiny. I want to take you back to an evening that you will all remember at the Willow Theater, and all 5 of the commissioners were there on stage, and full crowd, and all to talk about raising the millage rate. And 3 commissioners, 2 of whom are here and 1 that's not, voted against raising that millage rate that would have given you the opportunity to control your own destiny. Instead, it was voted down, and you were left with the millage rate that you had in place at the time, which meant that you had to go to the city every time you wanted to do something, from Gumbo Limbo to numerous other projects, including Boca Chica. So I want to encourage you to bite the bullet this go around. And I think Aaron had it figured last time it was about $70 per household. I think we can all afford $70 to let you control your own destiny as to what you want to do, not only with Gumbo Limbo, with Boca Chica, and all the other projects that are before you. So the other thing that came up during the whole 1.5 year hiatus was that the Meisner Park bond issue was paid off. And for some reason, you went to the city council to inquire whether you should continue to pay on that bond issue that had been satisfied. Of course, Andy Thompson, anti-district, would come up and say, you got to continue to pay on the bond issue. It makes no sense to me. I have not seen the documentation. I don't know what it says, but I can't imagine why you would have to continue to pay on a bond issue that's been satisfied. So I would stop the payments to the city, let them sue you if that's what they want to do. I think we all know an attorney downtown that owes this district a little debt of gratitude that would defend the district gratis. And I'd be happy to present your case to him if it ends up going that way. So anyway, that's all I've got to say, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else want to speak? Do we have any Zoom callers? Okay, we were in debt to you for your kind comments, and thank you, Tom. Public requests are now closed. It's time to approve the minutes of we have two meetings that we need to approve. The regular meeting held on June 7th, 2021. Do I hear a motion? Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, would you do the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. The next approval is for the regular meeting held June 21st, 2021. Do I hear a motion? Thank you, Mr. Engel. Do I hear a second?
Second, I have a correction, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
On page 11 of the packet referencing those minutes, there was a statement that said, I question the Friends donors commitment to the project. That wasn't anywhere close to what I was asking. I think I really asked what would happen if the letter of intent that we signed with the Friends and with the donor expired, if we were going to be able to renew that without any difficulty. I did ask about it being on budget, I believe, and was informed that, hadn't even gone out to bids.
I do
But-
remember that, yes.
But really, all I was asking was, if the donor's commitment to the project was going to continue with the continuous delays that we've had with getting this project off the ground. So if you could have that corrected.
Mr. Gorin, can we go ahead and approve this with the caveat that it will be corrected to, or should we approve these minutes at the next meeting?
To approve the minutes would agree to the change prospectively, having it futurely changed. The answer is you can do it tonight, and then they can be amended thereafter. So the answer is you
Okay.
can do it tonight.
Mr.
done.
Engel, would you withdraw your motion and then redo the motion?
Original motion is withdrawn. New motion to amend the minutes as per Commissioner Rowland's request. Minutes so amended. Move to accept those.
Do I hear a second?
Now second.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Melissa, would you do a roll call vote?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa. We now move to the regular business. The first item is to establish interview dates, times, and guidelines for all respondents to the request for qualifications for the architect engineering service for the Boca Chica property. Brianne, would you lead us off, please?
Commissioners, we received 4 responses to our RFQ for architecture and engineering services at Boca Chica. All 4 of those companies were responsive in their proposals. At this point, it's at your pleasure how you'd like to set them up for interviews, rank them after the interview process is the recommendation, so that we can get any questions that you have answered at that time. The idea is that we would have them come to a meeting we would just random order, set them up in 30-minute increments. They could do a 10-minute presentation followed by 20-minute Q&A. Obviously, if you guys have more questions than that 20 minutes, we would ask them to stay and continue answering the questions. But that's the recommendation. So then you could have a chance to rank them after that point.
Have any recommendations as to the order of presentation?
I would suggest that I just randomly draw them out of a hat and set them, schedule them that way. That's how we've done it in the past.
Do you have any questions? Mr. Engel, let's start with you.
Actually, I did have a question. Of course, if a man my age could actually remember what the question. So maybe if we could do a 10-minute presentation and 10 minutes, or even 15 minutes, for Q and A. It would, it'd save us at least a half an hour, and we could also attend to other business at that meeting in a timely fashion.
Stearns? Okay. Mr. Rollins?
Whether we do a separate meeting or not, I guess it's a question. We have 4 respondents.
Yes.
We could do it in one night. It might be a long meeting, but we should be out of the way. I pick one of our regular meetings from here and stuff.
She will be back for the August 2nd meeting. And since it's a quick turnaround, we could make that just the only agenda item.
August 2nd? August 2nd. Okay. I do have a lot of questions for the respondents, so I may be a question hog at that meeting. So, and are you in agreement with the way that Brianne will select? Okay. Yes, Mr. Mr. Gorin, would you like to answer that?
If I may, Madam Chair, this is the procedure under the CCNA, the Consultants Competitive Negotiations Act. It's not typical to pre-arrange the questions. The statute, I'm not sure, actually provides for it, doesn't provide against it either, but it's not customary, if I can use that term. I know that each of you would have questions to the extent that you can space your time. That's the best I can offer. I don't know that it's not a bid. It's not really a bid where you can, for example, supplement the bid notification to have to provide Q&A to those who ask questions about bid documents or specifications. These are professional qualifications, which you get to decide based on your embracement of who it is that's speaking before you. So I would think that it would be the best not to do that legally.
I've been going back and forth with our council
have been,
because I
yes.
had, a lot of questions and I thought, oh, well, I'll just get it out of the way, but can't do it.
The
So-
problem with Madam Chair and Commissioners is that there could be something lost in translation, particularly when you're dealing with professionals. It's not, technical specifications where you may have a qualification or a question about a technical spec. This is someone that you're going to be engaging that has certain professional qualifications. Each of you, your takeaway may be very different on the question. So this way you hear it all together. You make a decision based upon all the evidence before you.
Just to throw it out there though, so that all the respondents don't have to sit through the whole thing unless they want to, should we do the order tonight? And that way they would know what time that they would have to be here? Is that acceptable, Brianne, or would you? Well, it's better than having them have to all sit here if they don't want to.
This is known as the random selection process.
This is scientific.
Absolutely.
Let Melissa pick them.
Yeah, you and me both.
Okay, who is number 1? Calvin Giordano and Associates is number 2. Nicholas is number 3. That leaves Miller Lake as number 4.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I'd recommend that we follow up with an email in case there's a representative that's not here, but formalize the date and then you can
absolutely.
indicate an approximate timing of how these will shake down.
We do have 2 representatives here, so, and welcome, gentlemen and madam. So, is there anything else we need to cover on that? Okay, good. All right. Okay, the next item is the change order discussion for the additional irrigation at Boca Chica. It's found on page 12 of the agenda packet.
Commissioners, on page 12, it opens up, there's two change orders that we're looking to approve tonight. Melissa put together a memo kind of detailing what this is for. The first change order is to meet some code requirements for the entranceway. So the first change order, we're looking for a approval tonight for $16,925. And then the second change order was one that we requested to get to see the cost of putting irrigation on the two corners, the main corners of Jeffrey and Clintmore. If we take down that split rail fence and we put in the sod and we make it look really pretty and we water in that grass, we're looking at a sizable amount of time before we start developing that property into park. So we'd like to put the irrigation in. The irrigation can be utilized and possibly moved as it needs to be, but it will be utilized. The equipment itself will be able to be used as it goes. And this would be maintained by whoever we award that maintenance bid to, which I think Melissa stated in this memo too. So change order number 2, we are recommending approval of $84,365.
Commissioners, do you
sorry,
have any
there's also-
questions for Melissa or for Brianne?
I have one more, I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Change order number 3 is the credit amounts. That may be the first one to start with, is a credit of $10,984.
So would you go over the impact on the whole budget for the project, please?
If all are accepted tonight, the net change is $90,306.
Okay. Craig?
Maybe it's a question to Melissa. I'm fine with change order 1 and change order 3, but change order 2, I'd like to know who is the subcontractor doing the irrigation? Who is exactly doing it? So, yeah, so I'll tell you what, my limited experience with irrigation systems on large parks, I mean, through our homeowners association as well as through Peninsula, who I'm president of that, irrigation systems are very troubling. They're time consuming. And I'd rather not go with a general contractor of the irrigation doing it without some process selecting what they're installing, what they're going to do. I think it's just kind of too open-ended for such an expensive investment, but more importantly, it's the time involved with just babysitting the system to make sure it works correctly. So I'd recommend a separate RFP for the irrigation on those.
Maintenance work that's being done, so we wouldn't want them to sod if then they have to go back and put in irrigation.
I'd rather delay it than not do it, because I'm telling you, an irrigation system with the pumps is just very, it has to be well thought out, and it has to be done by someone who does irrigation. No, I'd just rather not do it until we know who's doing the work.
Melissa, you said this is the same subcontractor that CRC has or CSR had used for the western part of the entry to the eastern side. Was there any issues there? Okay.
It's on a timing system. They're monitoring it right now until the project is done. That will turn it over to our subcontractor.
Okay.
Monitor the timing and the water.
All right.
Written RFP that now have bids on.
And who has ultimate responsibility for this project? That'd be the general contractor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we've had good results with CSR? Okay. I guess I'm going to take a contrary opinion to my esteemed colleague, and I would go with the subcontractor selected by CSR, because they've done a very large project there at Petrie without any difficulties, on time and under budget, and I have confidence in them in selecting the right person. And rather than delay it any further, I would support a motion to accept it.
Mr. Ernst, let me just ask you, because you said you were in support of change order number one, is that correct?
Change order number one, correct.
Okay, that also includes furnish and install irrigation. So do you have, I just want this all to be out in the open for everybody.
Whatever's there is very small. I don't know what that is exactly. It's not explained.
That's the west side. The west side, maintenance that the motto is on the west side.
But that's already existing. That's city water.
It's not existing. They have to redo the system. It does not work. It hasn't worked since we wrote it.
I understand, but where is the water supply coming from? So it's city water. It's just
There's a well right there.
there's a well on
There's a
Yamato.
well with a pump. They had to replace the pump for the east side, but the west side runs off the west side runs off the east side pump.
Okay. Listen, I will object, going forward, more so for the maintenance of the thing going forward. And in fact, that you're going to ultimately, the irrigation system is an integral part of the entire side over there. So if you're going to put 80,000 into it, to me, you're potentially throwing it away. You need to think through the whole concept of where it's coming from, and it needs to be with an irrigation vendor. We know to know exactly what they're doing. And when you hand it over to a general contractor, you just don't know what you're getting. So my vote will be no, but you can do what you want. I think when there's an irrigation down and it's going to be got down, hopefully not often, call Bob.
I'll be delighted. Madam Chairman, let me make a motion if I might. Do we need a motion first on change order number one? Has that been?
We have not had a motion yet. Thank you.
Okay. Then I would make a motion that we accept the contractor's request for change order number one.
Do I hear a second? Thank you.
Okay.
Action on change order number one, commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Melissa, would you do a roll call vote on change order number one, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, change order number two, commissioners?
Madam Chair, is Erin on the line?
No,
Okay.
She's not.
So, let me make a motion. Let's see where this goes. Since there's four of us, we may end up having to wait for Erin, but I would make the motion that we approve change order number two in the amount of, was it 84,355?
365, 65. Yeah.
65.
Mhm.
Okay. Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? No? Melissa, a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa. Change order number three, this is a credit for $10,984. Am I correct? Okay. Do I hear a motion, please?
I'm on a roll. So move. Madam
You
Chair.
are on a roll. Thank you. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Mr. Engel. Any other discussion? Melissa, a roll call vote to accept change order number three for a credit for $10,984.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa. Now, item number three, establish a tentative millage rate. That's found on page 19 of your agenda packet. Brianne, would you lead us off, please?
Included with that memo, and the tentative millage rate, once it's set, we can always come down. You cannot raise it after you've set it. So a lot of things that we still have to consider, a lot of things that aren't established. And I'm not sure, Commissioner Ernst, if you want to kind of chime in on that a little bit, because we had a lengthy discussion about the unknowns and You had some more eloquent thoughts on it.
I don't know about eloquent, but couple of things, I guess, Tom Thayer's comments kind of lead it off correctly. The district is, from a financial position, better shape than most, but not nearly as good as others. And we have several big things coming forward at us. And so the CRA payments were something to elaborate on, Tom. There was some discussion last year and we went through council to look at what our obligations are for those. We're entered kind of a gray area. And then you have to ask yourself, is it worth it for taxpayers to be fighting with attorneys to do stuff or not do stuff? There were two interlocal agreements that basically, depending on how you read them, would give you the opinion that we do not have to pay that 1.5 million. It also gives you the opinion that maybe you do have to pay it. So my reaction from being kind of shut down and getting all of the feedback from the city, and we've jumped through hoops, was expenses magically appeared that had to be paid. And so large expenses, millions of dollars of past due 10 years things. There are things in there that would question, didn't we already pay for the staff to do that? We don't know, and it's not worthy of dragging the city and us through all that kind of stuff. So it's the first thing to add to the tax roll for this year. That's, if you got a problem with it, take it up with the city. We're being billed with it, and I don't think we're really obligated to do it, but we just pass it along to the taxpayers. So it's very unfortunate. Then you get into other things that are kind of out there. We were hit with the pump and piping project. Did we support and agree with the pumping piping project? It just seemed kind of excessive. We thought we could work the price down, but we have no control, no input on it. And so as a result of that, it was over a $3 million expense. It's a very large initiated project. There's debate amongst themselves of how that goes, but we're putting the bill up for it. So if you think it'll come in at 3.2, the city was very insistent on getting a contingency fund put in place with it. And that was the big debate, who's going to contribute to the contingency fund. So you keep adding these things up. This year we have and it's actually welcome, a maintenance facility at the Hornley Park, but it's new to us, and our share is 2.2 million. And that's per the agreement that says it's what the right allocation of what they think it should be for us. So we don't have a say in it. We don't have a design in it. It's 2.2 million. So you keep going through these different things. And we say, things that we have advocated for are not in our control. The tower project. I feel for the family that has donated the largest portion for it. I wish it can go sooner. But it's gone on and on and on. And why it's going to take so long, I don't know. But we're supporting it, and it's something that should come in lower. But it's when things take on a long life, they probably cost a lot. So all of these things said, those are the things that we know. There's kind of the unknown too. The budget we got was very much kind of draft submitted. It's not, it's pending further approval, pending review. And I know the city's going through a lot of work on that. So the email that you got, my first reaction was, hey, don't poke the eye of your brother, or sister. It's just not a good thing. But at the same token, it does highlight the tight financial situation that we are in, and the desire for us to build out Ocean Breeze into something that the community can deal with and enjoy. But we don't know what that is, because we were really surprised by the donation from the Boca Country Club. And, I, for one, have been an advocate not to have golf twice until we know what is going on with the cities and the golf. They could change that whole layout. It could be 27 holes when we're done with it. I don't know. But I think we have to give them the opportunity to figure out what they're going to do with it. And all I know is our costs are very high, and we don't know what they are, and we don't have any money coming in from the sale of Boca Muni. So my thought on this budget, this is a preliminary hearing. repeat, preliminary hearing, nothing's final. But if we pick a rate that is too low, we're locked. So we just don't have all the details of what our cost structure will be on that. And so in that spirit, I think we should err on the high side. I do think, it should be noted for taxpayers that last year, we went out of our way, not knowing what was going on with COVID. At the very first meeting, lowered it to 88, the millage rate of 88 cents, 18. That we could have left at the rollback rate like others did, but we didn't. We went below, we took our tax revenue down. And then we found out also that there was a mistake by the tax assessor for the Polo, I think it's a Polo Club, I think it is. That was like 300 and some odd thousand. A lot of unknowns. So we go back to the knowns and the unknowns and all those good things. And that's not me saying it. That's our former Secretary of Defense who passed away. But my recommendation after looking at this is to pick a millage rate that is higher than what we currently have, higher than the prior rollback rate, and hope that we can tighten this thing up a little bit and maybe make it lower. What is that millage rate going to be? My recommendation is just 1.05. And that's just a guess. It puts you in a range to do enough things, but we'll look further to see what we can do next year and what we can't do, with the hopes that range, that millage rate will come down as we get closer to the final budget.
Was that the 1.1580?
No, it's 1.05. Not on there.
Oh,
It's not at the high end of the 127 and the 115, and it's not the low end. It's kind of in the middle. And along with that, I would say the good news about the email that went out is it got response. It's some negative, some positive. It's going to be a combination of things. The millage rate is one thing to contribute towards all these nice expenses. The other thing is I'd like to have a collaborative effort with the city staff and volunteers to rethink, what they can at each park. And I really would like to have a committee at each park to say, okay, the district parks, what can we do better? And how can we lower those costs? Does Sugar Stand have to stay open till 10, 11 o'clock at night? I don't think so. I mean, I think you put a gate up and okay, if the baseball players have to go there, we can block them off. So they go to the baseball fields, but they don't have to have access to the community center. There's things that we just collectively just have to do. And it's not something I can do or the staff can do or but I think a combination of volunteers and staff will come up with good recommendations for each location that will help improve things, and lower some of the expenses. Okay.
thank you, Mr. Ernst. Commissioner Engel, would you like to weigh in, please?
Yeah, Commissioner Ernst brings up some very valid points. There are a host of cans we've been kicking down the road for a number of years, and the road is coming to an end. The system, in my view, is broken. The city says, well, this is what we want from you. This is what we expect from you, and this is what we're going to get from you. So, for example, the Hornley Maintenance Facility. Yes, we need a maintenance facility, but we take no part in the design. We take no part in picking contractors. We have no say in anything, but we have a responsibility for 30% of whatever the city thinks it's going to be. And then in the end, 30% of what the actual cost is. So the city right now says 7.2 million. That could just as easily be 9 or 10 or 11 million by the time all is said and done. Witness what happened with Wildflower, the increase there. Just too many things that are involved here that make it almost impossible to try and figure out exactly what our needs are. And there are too many things that should have been taken care of a while back. And I go back to what Commissioner Ernst said about the polo grounds. we're looking at subsidizing with our other residents, subsidizing the use of our facilities. And there's nothing we can do about it. So my point is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to our constituents. And we are effectively prohibited from fulfilling that responsibility by the rules that are in place now. And really, it limits us as to the flexibility we have. If I had my druthers, I'd go to the rollback rate. But in the real world, we really can't. So I'm looking at starting high and coming back down. Maybe we can get a greater sense of certainty in the future as to what our actual expenses will be. We can't rely on, well, the city doesn't fill all the positions, so there's going to be room for error. They may not finish all the capital improvements, but all these things come back to haunt us. Every last one of them. And if it's not this year, it sure as heck is going to be next year. Having said my piece, I have no choice in my mind but to advocate for a higher millage rate. We just need that flexibility. We need to know what kind of resources we're going to have available. And we have a lot of other things on our plate besides what the city is asking for, like replacing the Rutherford Community Center, finishing Ocean Strand, developing Ocean Breeze. I mean, these are going to cost a nice chunk of change. And then there's also, before I forget, the Gumbo Limbo Master Plan, which is more than just the tower and the boardwalk. But anyway, I've said my piece. I've taken up enough time. I'm going to advocate for an increase. The way I look at it, we're looking at, I hate to go over more than 1 mil, but the 1.15, 1 point,
It's not out there. I
Yeah.
suggested 105.
yeah, well, I would go with 105. But,
That's 19%.
I'm sorry?
That's 19%.
Yeah, I don't see where we have a choice. And I'd rather start high and be able to come back down.
Just so that the public is aware that at this tentative millage rate setting, this is not what we're obligated until we have gone to our first and second public hearings. And the public is invited to those meetings as they have been in the past. These are not set in stone, but we have to start at a higher rate than we anticipate possibly. We still could, end up with the 1.05, but we cannot start high and or start low and then increase it at the first public hearing or the second public hearing. So Mr. Rollins, would you like to put your 2 cents worth in, please?
Sure would.
Good.
Having sat on this commission for 24 years, I think I'm reminded of this well-worn statement, no good deed goes unpunished. Several years ago, I think before most of you were on the commission, we would only be responsible for beach renourishment on the Central Beach, which was Red Reef Park. We had no idea what we'd be looking at today in terms of expenses. We put down a nice facility over at Patch Reef. Did the park in sports turf so we could do the phase two in Hornley in grass. One of the commissioners reminded us of the expense that we're putting in to Patch Reef, but I think it was well worth the effort. And we'll see if there's any expense savings in that or not. But over time, I look back on the things that we have been very accommodating to our partners downtown by going with the beach renourishment, working with them on to Hornley. The city actually came to us and said, "The drawings are 60% completed. Would you mind taking over the project?" And at that point, they had a $24 million price tag on the project. We took the project over. The bids came in at just under 10 million, and due to a design error that we were handed, the project ran up to just under 14 mil because of some underground designs that had not been adequately prepped in the drawings. The thing that concerns me the most about this is that, to Tom's inquiry, we've tried unsuccessfully several years to get out of the CRA, the downtown redevelopment that we had to pay. And from everything I have heard and listened to the council at the workshop, they're going to want to try to draw that out even further. Now, I don't know if the answer is whether we want to litigate this or not. We haven't talked about that, and that's not the subject of this meeting anyway. But I think that the millage rate that Craig has proposed, I'm not so sure that we're going to come off of that. But I do think that we need to make every effort to do what Craig has proposed as far as evaluating the staffing and the hours of operation, and maybe even the user fees. For instance, Gumbo Limbo is a world-renowned facility. You see billboards announcing Gumbo Limbo, and we support that with our tax dollars, but we get no revenue from that facility. And we have a lot of people, both internationally and nationally, that come to that place, and they marvel at what we have there. And it's a marvelous place. Maybe a user fee might be helpful there. We're not getting the revenue from the parking meters that are over at Red Reef Golf Course, and yet we're paying for the full maintenance of that facility, and we've asked about that. But the biggest hypocrisy is the fact that the city is selling the municipal golf course at 65 million? And I believe that was built with recreation dollars. And I think that, as we've all said publicly, is some of those funds should come back to the city, to the district, in terms of assisting us with some of these other projects rather than piling on expenses. And we've had a number of people from the community have said, "Why don't you peel off some of those funds?" And yet the city has never expressed what they plan to do with those funds. I think we all have a pretty good idea what's going to happen if the tennis courts from Memorial are being moved over to Boca Country Club. I think that gives me an idea that there may be a master plan for something downtown. I could be wrong, but I suspect I'm on to something there. And looking at our budget, I think that we've got to be real diligent in fleshing out those expenses that may be inflated. As I said at our last meeting, when after getting through a pandemic, I realized that in some cases my own firm was overstaffed. Because you get busy and business is good and you don't examine those very closely. And I think closer examination is especially in order. I would like to present something to both Craig and Steve. Sam, can I
Yes,
hand
sir.
out something?
You may, so
Okay.
long as everybody gets a copy and that the clerk puts it in the minutes.
Okay, it's germane to this. This is a interlocal agreement between the city of Boca Raton and the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Tax District at the time. It's dated the 12th of June, 1984. And I just want to read section 3 of this contract. It says the terms of this agreement shall be indefinite. However, this agreement may be terminated at any time by either party. There's one for you, Craig, and pass one down to Steve. We're paying for Red Reef approximately a little over $4 million. I don't have the exact number. Do you have one, Joe? Okay. Commissioners, it's not something we can vote on today because it's not on the agenda, but it's food for thought. I think we've looked at other agreements, and Steve, you've alluded to the fact that we get assessed these charges and we really don't have much input into them. Well, I found something that we look like we may be able to have some input in, and I hope at the next meeting, I would like to get this on the agenda. I know, Brianne, we talked about the next agenda meeting to be solely dedicated to the RFPs, but I think this is a budgetary item that I think we all need to consider. I'm not saying that we should withdraw from this, funding Red Reef, but I'm saying it's certainly an opportunity to have a discussion about our expenses over there when we're paying. That's Red Reef, that's the golf course, that's Gumbo Limbo. And I think that, in fairness to us, I think we need to be voicing our opinion about how these expenses are handled. In years past, we didn't have all these big projects. We didn't have the beach renourishment, which we haven't even spoken about. That's in the budget here, I think, for $2 million this year, isn't it? Right. So that's something we haven't even talked about. 20 years ago, we wouldn't have had near that amount of money. It would probably been something around $900,000, not $2 million. So I submit to you that there's an opportunity here for us to reduce our expenses over at Red Reef. I think we ought to take that opportunity to do that. I think we need to find out what's worked a little bit harder to try to get some money from the golf course to pay for some of these expenses that the city is asking us to, some of the capital improvements. I think the list was totaling some $6 million in capital improvements. And that, when you consider 2 years ago, we tried to raise our millage rate in order to accomplish some of these projects we're talking about today. And I would use the term ambushed because I felt that's the way I felt at that meeting, is that, I was the sole person that stuck to my guns on that. And I really felt that we had been, an effort had been orchestrated by some nefarious parties downtown to keep us from getting the millage rate. And maybe there was other purposes involved, but we've always tried to do the right thing. We've always tried to be transparent. And I think that, we'll continue to do that. But I think now is a great opportunity to stand up and say, we think that this process is one way and we need some relief. And I'm giving you an opportunity to express that relief in the form of an option on Red Reef Park. That's it, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
To all commissioners, I do believe that we should increase our millage rate for a certain amount. I'd like for Brianne to, at this 1 point, let me go back, that Mr. Ernst suggested 1.05, if you would figure out what it would be for the different individual residences, just to give the community an idea of what it's going to cost them. They're all, a lot of these people are using our facilities and enjoying our facilities. I think that's the important thing. We have beautiful facilities that are renowned, and we need to keep them at the optimum cleanliness, safety. Safety is a big thing. And it doesn't come cheap. So I think we would need a motion to adopt a tentative millage rate for this date, and then we will go forth on with more budget discussions in August. We have 3 meetings then, and then we will have our first public hearing that we're going to discuss next. So do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion, but I think before we set that or discuss that rate, I just want everyone to be on board with it. You have several different rates in front of you. This rate that we recommend, as you mentioned in the beginning, you cannot go higher after that. So it almost behooves you to take the highest rate and then decide later. After carefully looking at the numbers with Brianne, I came to that number of 1.05 with the assumption of paying for all the things that we've talked about, the knowns and the unknowns. Best estimate, but that doesn't include the unknown unknowns. So if you want a
What
higher
number
rate,
would you like to start the discussion?
I'm thinking 105 is where we're going to land. But if you want to go a little higher, it doesn't hurt. So I'd rather this group have that discussion if you think it should be higher. Bob, you or Steve.
Madam Chair, if I can quickly, while you deliberate,
Please, Mr. Gorin, thank you.
under state law, as you know from your experience, under Chapter 200, this is the preliminary rate, preliminary millage that you're setting. It's going to appear in the trim notices that are sent out to taxpayers, including yourselves. The end result of which is that it's a topmost rate that you cannot exceed, but it's a rate that you can legally reduce. And that's based upon 2 full, complete due process public hearings in September, the dates of which you'll set momentarily from now. But at this rate, you're allowed to incur that expense of notifying the public as though that rate specifically is on the DR 420. It's sent to the property appraiser's office. It shows up on the trim notice. You're not bound by it. You're not committed legally to it, but it's a rate that under the statute, you are allowed to notify the public that you will not exceed that rate. And that, as you've discussed on this dais this evening, that rate can be reduced, can be modified, can be amended. It cannot be exceeded, but can certainly be reduced based upon testimony and evidence and considerations, all of which are related to your fiduciary duty as public officials, which will occur during those two public hearings. So if there's any doubt of any sort on the dais or on the other side of the dais that you have absolute rights to reduce that rate, you legally do, and you legally can. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr.
ma'am.
Gorin. Is everybody, you all are in agreement with that? Okay.
With agreement with what Sam said or what Craig said.
No, we all understand what Mr. Gorin is saying.
So I realistically think you're going to land at a 1.05. That gives you, I think, a contribution, Brianne, of roughly $5 million.
It's an extra $5 million for a $300,000 home. It's about $50 more a year. $1 million home, it's another $168 a year.
So I think it's a realistic number, I think, going into it, but I don't know of any other unknowns if you want to add something higher. That's my point.
You know,
Mr. Rollins.
the only thing I'll add is that I think that our taxpayers need to know that the reason we're doing this is to meet the capital expenses and the operation expenses and maintenance expenses that we are set by the city's budget. And the issue that I have with the budget is that it doesn't reflect any credit for the sale of the city golf course. I just don't. I hate to look a taxpayer in the eye saying we're increasing or maybe I should. We're increasing our rate by 31% because we can't get any money from the city to do from the sale of the golf course, which was built with recreation dollars. Activities at Ocean Breeze. I feel like Craig, probably the responsible thing to do is the 1.05 mil, and that will help us do a lot more than what we would do if we went to roll back or maintain the same rate. We're going to have a rate increase. Wouldn't have been so traumatic if we hadn't have buckled down, bucked under to the folks that were hammering us about raising it. And I think that they probably intimidated the folks in the audience who were in favor of it, because I know there were some that had told me they would support it, but they were intimidated, would not speak. I'm really upset with the way that the budget was prepared, with no foresight and no consideration for revenue coming to us from, or using the revenue from the sale of the golf course to take care of some of the CIP projects that the city has asked us to complete. And so did you want to make a motion, Craig, on the millage rate? 1.05?
Well, actually,
Steve, would you like to?
just to Bob's point, two things. First, it was because we took on the responsibility for Ocean Breeze that enabled the city to sell the Muni course. Second, if the city turned around and said, all right, we're going to kick in 10% of the proceeds from the Muni course to our capital improvement projects that you were going to fund, and that the district was going to fund, that all but eliminates the need for a tax increase. When you take a look at the numbers, we're looking at another $6.5 million that would be contributed to us to be used for city capital improvement projects.
We were not very good negotiators, Steve. That's
No,
all I
we
got to
were
say. The
not.
city came to us and asked us to buy that property.
Right.
And we should have said, we'll be happy to do that. But when you sell Boca Muni, here's what we need.
Yeah.
And we did not do it.
We were, we're trusting souls.
Well, that's been.
That's true. Well, looking back 2 years ago too, when we were going to do a significant increase, it was going to be only for 2 years. And now here we are. We would probably not be in this position had we gone ahead and done it. And we would have the extra revenue and we could do these other projects and we might not be arguing about CRA and things. I just don't think we have any other options. I think we have to increase the millage rate. So with that, we do need a number though that is what we want or even higher so that we can adjust it going forward at the first and second public hearings.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion for the proposed millage rate to be 1.05.
Okay.
And in my view, that's conservative where we are going to land on it. It's not with the intent of, coming down, but, maybe there is a discussion later that will contribute to further defining the projects of what we have. I'd also ask that we make every effort to go park by park with both the staff and community volunteers to see how we can reduce expenses and just come to a better managed thing. And then my last, so that's the motion, but I do want to talk about Bob's comment about Red Reef.
We'll get into that.
Okay.
Okay. Do I hear a second? Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Melissa, would you do a roll call vote for setting the tentative millage rate at 1.05 as per Mr. Ernst's motion and Mr. Engel's second?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, commissioners. Your comments maybe during commissioners' reports? Okay. All righty. Moving along. Now we need to set a date for the first public hearing. Brianne?
Memo in here detailing when the school board meetings are. They have one in August too, but we didn't even list that one. And then Palm Beach County's meetings are the 9th and the 20th. We have some holidays to work around in September as well. We're not obligated to work around the cities, but considering our constituents are the same, I just wanted to include their public hearings as well. They've scheduled them for the 13th and the 22nd. So we are looking at maybe the 10th and the 17th for our first and second public hearings. Those are Fridays, I believe.
And that would be at 6 PM.
To be separate than our regular meeting?
They-
I mean, but not on the same date as our, you could have it right after a regular.
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Please, Mr. Gorin.
There's nothing which would preclude having a tax and budget hearing during a regular meeting, so long as they're segregated from the agenda so that they're separate. Yeah. But they can't conflict with the other governmental agencies, as you know, under state statute.
But our first meeting in September is the 13th, which is the same as the cities.
Correct.
Everybody's looking at their calendar.
When we said September 10th, does anybody object to that one?
September
10th.
10th
It's on a Friday.
at 6 PM.
Can't do it.
Okay.
Thursday we can't do because the Palm Beach County has theirs on the 9th.
Okay, let's go back. And the 15th is a holiday? Is the 5th, is the 15th a holiday? That, the 16th is Yom Kippur. Does that impact the 15th? Okay. All righty.
I can do just about any day but Friday. And of course. and of course,
The 9th we can't do because it's the same as the county's dates. The 8th runs over with Rosh Hashanah. Does that interfere with the 8th?
Yeah, 7th and 8th.
That week is tapped out.
Can we do the 3rd? Right. Yeah, well, you know, how about the 2nd? The 2nd works. Thursday, 2nd of August.
September?
September.
Good with me.
Okay.
I'll make it work. I've got a wedding that weekend. My daughter's getting married.
But not on Thursday.
No, but
Where's the wedding?
Oh,
Tampa,
Oh.
but I'll do it. I'll do it. This
You
is,
want the Wednesday?
no. This Thursday's fine. I'll make it work. I'll make it work.
Wednesday night. I mean, you can- is the first work for you? First work for you. Why don't we do Wednesday so you have the extra day?
That's very sweet. Thank you.
Wednesday, September
If
1st.
everybody can do that.
That's on the 6th.
The 6th, okay.
Yeah.
Good to me.
So the Wednesday's kind of a nice middle of the week day. Is that okay, the 1st? Is that within the spirit of the?
So long, again, so long as you're not in conflict with other governmental agencies' hearings. If that date, you're
That-
talking about the 6th or the 1st.
The 1st is fine.
1st is workable.
There's no conflicts.
Okay,
What time? are we
6
thinking?
PM.
6
p.m.
PM.
Mhm.
And the second hearing must be no less than 2, no more than 5.
Oh,
No less than
After it's
after
advertised.
it's advertised. No, not less than 2 days, nor more than 5 days after advertising. You have to have your second public hearing.
wow.
Just telling you the law. Tallahassee told us that. From it's 2, no less than 2, no more than 5 from posting, from advertising.
But can we post it later?
Yeah.
I mean, like if,
Advertised.
yeah, if we advertised it on like the 21st, could we do the 22nd or something like that? I mean, I know we can't do maybe the 23rd. If we advertised it on the 20th?
To do the second and final public hearing on the 20th.
No, we can't do it on the
Right.
20th because that's the Palm Beach County. But if
Right.
we advertised it on the 20th for the later in the week.
I'm out of town on the 22nd and 23rd. I am here the 24th.
That's a
See,
Friday.
It's
So you
Friday.
can't. It's a tough month.
You're on Saturday?
And Friday and Saturday are no good for me.
You can't schedule it on.
What
the-
about the 27th? If we advertised it like on the 22nd, Monday, the 27th?
Yeah, that's our regular meeting.
It's a
We
regular
could-
meeting.
We
We
could,
can do 2 meetings.
Yeah.
According to council.
we've done that before.
Yes,
Yeah, we
so
can.
long as, again, you segregate the item and make sure the public has an independent right of access on your public hearing items.
We'll just do it back to back.
Okay, that's perfect.
What's the second day?
The 27th.
But I thought we had, so are you saying we're going to use the September 2nd meeting as the first one?
Yes.
I thought it had to be within 5 days or something.
Of advertising, 2 to 5 days of advertising your second public hearing. You have to have it within 2 to 5 days of advertising it.
Okay, so we're gonna do we're gonna go back to doing the first.
Mhm.
September 1 and September 27. Is that correct?
Yes.
6 p.m.
Okay. Do we have a motion for September 1st, please?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Melissa, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Gorin, can we vote on the 27th of September for the
For-
second public hearing, or do we have to wait until the first public hearing?
You have to have your first public hearing on the first,
Okay,
and then you'll then at that meeting, set your second and final public hearing. But you
Okay.
have a preconceived notion of when you want to have it, so then the brand can advertise it.
Yeah, we'll block out calendars.
Yeah.
And we'll set it up
Okay,
to
sounds
advertise appropriately.
okay. Moving right along. Okay, Mr. Ernst, I think we need some motions for the approval of payroll and invoices for, the first one is for July 6th, 2021, found on page 23 of your agenda packet.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ratify our commitment for $96,157.90 for the July 6 invoices that were previously handled via email.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Melissa, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. And for July 19th?
It's, the invoices were dated on July 17th, but for the total amount was $84,268.84. I'd like a motion for approval of those.
Do I hear a
invoices for
second?
payroll.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Any discussion? Okay, Melissa, another roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. Time for reports and discussion items. We'll start off with Executive Director Harms.
Commissioners, the agreement for use of our facilities with Verdi K through 8 was approved by the school board. We received an executed copy and Sam is going to take that tonight to record it with the county. The RFQ for auditing firms is due back this Friday and the committee is going to meet on August 2nd, to and that's the extent of my updates.
Thank you. Mr. Gorin.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. There are two things that we've been assigned the task of doing, as you know. One of which is to study the existing ILAs and to give you some legal analysis of just the fine commentary that was offered by each of you this evening on what contracts are in place and how they get to be implemented, or how they get to be potentially terminated. About a year or so ago, we provided you with a matrix of all of the ILAs that exist, and there were many. In fact, there were a couple we might have actually missed unintentionally that were on the master list, which through Brienne's help, we've now supplemented that list. So we will hopefully have by the next meeting a memo which will clarify for you what's out there and what the terms are, and what can and cannot be thought through in the context of potential modification. Red Reef is an example of one which may be terminable for convenience. Others may not be. And to the extent that we can prepare a memo, which we intend to do, and bring it to your attention for review, we intend to do that at the next meeting. The second aspect of our assignment was to look at the AG's opinion, recognizing that the district has some limitations under its special act regarding sale, lease, or conveyance. And we've been tasked with looking at various legal options that might otherwise be applicable, so as to think about how the district can in fact coordinate a future use of certain properties. And we're working on that memorandum as well. And there are some options which we think are, I will use the word creative, but they're legally available as options that the board may wish to consider. And we will provide that memorandum at the next meeting as well. We know what the limitations are. We know what the restrictions are. We need to find some room in between those restrictions and conditions that will provide options to you in the context of future opportunities, as the case may be. And those need to be weighed against, to some degree, the investment opportunity of a proposer or bidder or vendor that would otherwise seek to do business with the organization, with something that would allow that vendor or user or responder to hang their hat legally on it and to operationally implement a situation where they can finance it. That's what we know what our special act says. We know what the limitations are. We need to be creative but thoughtful and also legal in the context of that advice. We intend to provide that at the next meeting as well. I mean, I can give you some insight to that. I think you've already had some conversations about that, but we need to formalize the answer, do some additional legal homework, and give you some direction. And we'd welcome the opportunity of your insight at the next meeting. But we hear you and we recognize what needs to be done.
At what point would you have that memo available so that we can discuss at a future agenda?
The objective is to give it to you for the next regular meeting, which I think is August the 2nd.
Okay.
All right. August the 2nd. And hopefully publish it for your review prior to the meeting to allow that you some time to digest the options.
Thank you.
Limited as they may be, but realistic as they should be. And we're not going over the cliff for you, and you're not going to go over the cliff for yourselves because you're fiduciaries. You know what your obligations are. You took an oath of office, and to the extent that there are options, we'll give you what we think are the best rational legal options, and not those which are a gamble, or those which are uncertain, or those which could potentially be troublesome legally for the organization or for the people you serve.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
That's it.
Gorn.
That's all I have tonight, but thank you for listening and appreciate your exchanges with regard to the millage issues. I appreciate the fact you gave me the chance to give you some insight, and the setting of the millage, again, is not a legal commitment. It's an operational ceiling that can be changed, as you know, at the next public hearings, which you've scheduled in September. As always, thank you for listening. Appreciate the opportunity very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gorin. Mr. Engel, would you like to lead off with commissioner reports?
I want to reiterate what our council has just said with regard to millage rates. This is to give us the latitude that we need. It's not set in stone, but understand, and I'm saying this for the record, understand we need that flexibility because we're basically just handed bills and with the instruction here, pay it. So we have to have the money to pay it, and we have to be able to take care of our own obligations as well. I'm hoping that Mr. Gorin will find additional provisions in our other ILAs, similar to the one that Mr. Rollins found in the Red Reef ILA, because that is something that should be open to discussion. If, we have a limited number of tools at our disposal, and we have next to no leverage. If this gives us some leverage, then that's great. And bear in mind, we're not doing this to be in opposition to the city. and I've said this, I don't know, maybe 100 times, we want to be the city's partners. We want to collaborate. We want to be able to work together. But at some point, the playing field has to approach being level. Okay, you guys could be the senior partners, we can be the junior partners. That's not important to me. But the key is to be partners. And the key is also to take care of the problems that we have with budgets. For example, we're going to have to make a decision this year as to who's a resident and who's a non-resident, because we're going to eventually have to increase fees. And that's something we kick down the road. We need to take care of it. We need to take care of the situation with the polo grounds, which involves getting our state legislative delegation involved. We can't kick that down the road anymore. It's unfair to the rest of our constituents. And that's all I got for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Mr. Ernst?
Couple things, I guess, going back to the Red Reef, this is separate from the Gumbo Limbo agreement, or is it the same thing?
I think it's the same thing, Craig.
It's the same thing. Okay. Yeah, I've heard several things. I guess one question directed to you, Bob. If the city was willing to say if there's 67+ million they're getting for the golf course, if they were willing to give us 2.5 towards our budget, would you consider lowering that millage rate?
Craig, I don't want to negotiate.
I hate to put you in that spot.
I'm not going to negotiate our position at this point, because there's a lot of different things that we could come up with that might be more palatable to the city and easier for us to swallow too.
Yeah.
So rather than saying, yes, we could do that, I'd rather sit down at a table and play poker with these guys and say to them, let's do the right thing by our constituents, and whatever that happens to be. I'm not suggesting to you that we not honor the obligations that we have at Red Reef for sure. I'm just talking about things going forward.
Yeah.
But I think that we've had enough experience to know that cost overruns. We've experienced them. The city's experienced them with the Wildflower, and who knows what may happen with this maintenance facility.
Yeah.
So I would say let's leave the negotiations to let's be open to honest discussion with the city regarding this. But I think that this is something that we have that arrow in our quiver that we might be able to negotiate some better terms on that golf course.
Yeah, I think, look, the concern I have with, Gumbo Limbo and Red Reef is that this district is really the instrumental in founding it, funding it. Gordon Gilbert, former commissioner here, took the charge of delivering it. And one of the things I've learned in our community is the volunteers do a phenomenal job. And when they really get a hold of things, they run with it. So I'm hopeful that we can not discourage volunteers, but encourage volunteers in all our parks, in all funds. And I'd like to see that really, happen. So out of that email, Tom, there came in, there are a lot of responses, some positive, some negative, but I don't want to miss the opportunity of the ideas that were put forward and the people who care about our community who responded. And I went through and read through them. I thought, oh, there might be a few of them. There was a lot of them. And I think it's a good, healthy thing. We got a lot of good feedback out of that from volunteers. And I'm optimistic that with Michael and his staff, the staff who are running the parks, and I do believe in accountability of the parks. I'm not a fan of multiple departments running things. I want one person in charge of each big park, just like they picked for the new golf course. And I think it's important that one person's accountable for all the park rangers, instead of different silos, they all have to work together. So I think there's opportunity to help reduce some of our costs, to increase our, we'll have to increase the budget to fund some of these things. We don't know what we're embarking upon at Ocean Breeze, but I certainly want to see a high caliber park in Ocean Breeze in some way or form. And I think it behoove us to, if we're going to run with it, we have to do it ourselves and be prepared to stand on our own 2 feet. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Ernst. Mr. Rollins?
Yeah, well, thank you, Craig. I thought you were going to take me to task on that. I think that's an opportunity, and I don't want to discount the thought that you had, but I think it's important that there may be a medium ground that we can find with Red Reef in terms of what contributions we make. But certainly, I think there's an opportunity here for the city to help us out with this without putting the tax burden totally on our residents to do the projects that we have on our own, plus the ones that they're asking us to do. I thought the email that was sent out, I don't know where they went, Brianna. I think you told me that they used the city's mailing list off the water bills. Where did they come up with those?
Find out exactly where he got the email list. I know he got them from the city, but I'll find out which area.
Well, they must have pulled my name because I didn't get one. And I'm not sure that they would have my email address, but I'm more concerned about the folks in the reserve area, because the city wouldn't have that information if they're in the reserve area. So we need to make sure that they get that information. I thought the responses, as Craig said, most of them were spot on. Some of them misinformed about what we do, but that's understandable. That's the reason why we did this, is to inform people as to who we are, how we do, and what we own, and what we're doing for the community. I did speak to Brianne about, I thought it was appropriate that we respond to those questions that were in there so that we don't leave those hanging out there. A couple of other things that I would mention is, Craig, you talked about it as staffing. I think that along with the study, the recreation needs study, I think there should be some kind of a best practices analysis put to our parks from a staffing standpoint. Because I think you're right. I think we need one person whose key responsibility is that when we have a problem or an issue, we can talk to them and also understand the needs that they have better. Because I think that as a result of the pandemic, I think we need to do a more review of what we're offering. With that said, I know we had a discussion regarding pool hours of swim and racket, Brian. Didn't we change those?
Pre-pandemic, they were extended. I think, I don't know if they were back to regular swim now, or are we still doing, we are back to regular swim. Okay. Back to
Well,
regular.
I know that Memorial is open until 6:30. And I think ours closes at 5:30.
Mhm.
I want to check to be sure. I know I've had people who wanted to swim after work, but they can't get here in time for 5:30 swim.
Okay.
So I'd want to go back. I think our time should mirror those of the cities for sure. The other thing that I'm sorry, Meadows Pool.
I know that because my son's in Boca.
Oh, okay. I think we'd be consistent. Thank you, Craig. I wasn't sure. I was thinking it was 6:30. If it's 7, I think we need to analyze us doing the same thing to be consistent.
Okay.
That we're always talking about being consistent with the city, and I think that's one area that we should try it and see what the demand is. I'm not saying that if the demand doesn't hold up for those later hours, that's one thing, but I think we should give it a try.
Okay. And just to answer your question about the emails, they came from the city's email blast list. So whoever when the city sends out their email blast, there's an opportunity to sign up for the email list, so we'll get that out, Barbara.
Okay. Another thing too, that what I ask Sam, are we, when you're doing this analysis of the ILAs, are we obligated to hire the city for our O&M at our facilities? Several years ago, before this most people here were on the commission, we investigated that with Patch Reed. And we found out that a private contractor was less expensive than the city, but for various reasons, we decided to stay with the city. But I want to know if it's possible, we could go to bids and get another contractor to bid on the maintenance services.
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Please do, Mr.
That is
Gorin.
certainly an item, Commission, which is in play in our review and analysis. It's a topic which we, independent of your thought processes or your analysis in the past, have caused us to think and take a step back and look at that option and to look at the special act and to interpret that act, to basically look at that option, which frankly, I'll give you a tentative answer this evening, which is it's a viable option to thoroughly consider. It's one which we are considering and one which we will address in the memo.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And then I think I mentioned the other thing is that I know there was in the packet, there was a suggestion for fees. I don't remember whether there was any fee schedule for Gumbo Limbo on that list. Because I think there's no fee to, is that the only facility in the city that doesn't have a fee? Pardon?
The Science Explorium doesn't have a fee for an entrance.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think of other areas, but yeah.
What about programming?
Programming, there's fees. There's fees for programming at Gumbo Limbo too, and the science camps and things like that, there's
Okay.
fees.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Madam Chairman, I think that's enough for me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few things. One of the things was to find out who gets those emails, because I didn't receive one and I live in the district. So I'd like to get that handled.
Over 35,000 people who have signed up for programs, registration software, and other activities that they've done throughout the city. That's where they got the emails.
Okay, well, we'll have to work on that with
Yep.
the PR people. The other thing, Brianne, we have asked repeatedly about monthly reports for the different parks.
We get some updates about participation, but we don't have the monthly participation reports anymore. Those are not coming through. I think they're reevaluating how they're going to do it and how they're going to collect that data. We did get some numbers on pickleball, which is doing great.
Okay,
Send those out.
I mean, the sooner the better. I just like to know who's doing what where. There was a comment made at our last meeting that none of the youth golf people are asking for any of, for a facility at Ocean Breeze. I know this is a little premature since we haven't decided what we're going to put there, but just to put it out there, we all received a letter from the coach from FAU's golf team, and there are other people in the community who are interested in having youth golf, and I'm talking college age and younger, at a learning facility of some kind at Ocean Breeze. Another one of our residents is also looking into other, funding opportunities that may not even have to come from the district. He wasn't able to call in for public requests tonight, but there are other opportunities to help our youth. And I was out at Southwinds the other day, and there were so many kids at a camp. And I asked one of them, and they said, well, we come from such and such a camp. But there were a lot of kids that I think that there are just so many youth that could benefit by a learning center if we ever built one. And I think that's all I have, other than our future agenda items, the Red Reef ILA and the RFQ respondents. And Mr. Gorin, I think you're going to weigh in with some memos.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
We welcome it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Engel?
Oh.
Come on, Steve.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
Thank you. Melissa, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and see you in a couple of weeks.